I want you to get up every morning or go to bed every night and be like, thank you, heart, for beating all day. Thank you, body, for getting out of bed. Thank you, eyes, for seeing. Thank you, ears, for listening. You name it. Your body is working. And even amidst the hardest, most tumultuous times, darkest times of your life, your body deserves gratitude, because I truly know and believe that your body hears everything. And when you're constantly cutting it down, the body will revolt.
Hi, and welcome to Hope, Health, and Wellness Advocacy. I'm Tara Adams, and I am honored today to introduce you to my friend, Gina Newton. Hi, Gina.
How are you, Tara? Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. I wanted to introduce you, and I was thinking of how I could explain kind of what you do. You and I have worked together. I've personally worked with you and received a lot of benefit. I wrote down so that I could write it, express it, I think the way that you would appreciate. She helps women shift their energy to live better, energetically balanced lives.
I love that. I love that. I love that. And I would say the only thing I would add to it is, like, I'm very passionate about holistic healing the whole person. And I'm an advocate for natural medicine, especially as it relates to mindset.
I so appreciate that. My history of chronic illness for many years, especially helping my mom and other friends and family with chronic illnesses, I found that until you add some component of alternative, holistic, natural forms of healing with whatever you're doing, you're really going to be stuck and maybe kind of frustrated. And I can say that working with you, you've really helped me energetically, address issues that are, clearly in the traditional medical world befuddled. They just don't recognize it. That's not their zone of genius, to be fair. But it really helps move the needle. And, we were talking prior to starting this recording, pain. I had a lot of pain, and I've noticed that since I've started using energetic work and other alternative holistic methods, that the pain is almost non-existent. I don't know that I could say I'm completely pain-free or pain-free all the time, but so much so that I have hope and I'm living again. And so I know you have a history kind of like that, and that it brought you to this point. I'd love to hear kind of what brought you to your Healing with Gina business that you now have.
Yes, thank you. So, when you were talking and you were saying pain, and so pain is energy to me. And I would say even 5 years ago, I wouldn't have made such a statement, but a lot of times now I look at pain as energy in the body that is speaking to us. And I believe that the body is so much smarter and more powerful than a lot of people give it credit for. And I've always been fascinated with the body. So I can thank one of my aunts growing up. She was really sort of like the vision of success within our family. She was the only woman to have gone to college, and she was a medical technologist in various hospitals in the Boston area. And so I sort of followed suit with her because, she was definition of success. So I am trained. I have a biology degree and I have a health science master's. I was on an MD PhD track at one point, and sort of envisioned myself becoming sort of like a researcher. And cancer has always sort of been one of my passions, because it's just only increased in, popularity is like not the right word, but like it's increased in incidence.
Yes.
And I don't, unfortunately, and I don't know a single person who's not been touched by it. And I think, I certainly at a point, I would say in the last 20 years, became really curious as to why that was. And so that's sort of always been my path. I very quickly realized that I was not meant for bench research because I am very social. I do love to connect with people, and scientists really sort of spend a lot of time in the lab. And I was at the mercy of mice at one point. And so I said, this is just not feeling good for me. And, someone, a very wise person on my path said, you should really look into clinical research. And lo and behold, here I am 20 years later. I've spent a significant time in drug development as a project manager, director, really sort of overseeing clinical trial conduct for different oncology drugs. But that all sort of changed for me around, I would say, at least 2014, but between 2014 and 2017, I became a mom in 2014, and then a mom to two by 2016. And in parallel, two of the most important people in my life became quite ill. My aunt was diagnosed with ovarian cancer actually in 2011. And then my father, who I had a very volatile relationship with for a very long time for a variety of reasons. He became quite ill with severe cardiovascular disease in late 2015, early 2016. And so it all sort of culminated in a very dark period in my life. I had a lot of joy with my children, but I was also watching, two of my most cherished family members decline rapidly in health. And in parallel with that, following their passing, and like they had both passed in 2017, early in 2018, I found myself in deep physical pain, one of my hips. I was a competitive runner. And I say competitive, I was competitive with myself. And, that was really my outlet and how I expended my energy. And it was very healing for me, but it, was churning a lot of energy within my body, and it wasn't really releasing it. And so what happened was early in 2018, I was in so much pain, I could not sleep. I could not pick up my children. I could not do, and I was just about 40 at the time. I had always been active. I had always taken such good care of myself. And here I am. I remember going apple picking and I could cry because I just couldn't even hike up the apple orchards. And I was prescribed a highly invasive surgery that would have put pins into my hip and, would have taken me out of work. I started investigating medical leave. And just one day I sort of said to myself, I'm not doing this. This doesn't feel right, because the surgery was being done in teenagers and 20-year-olds. And here I am now 40. And, it was very experimental. And it was too big of a surgery to be done just to give it a shot. And that was really sort of what opened my path to holistic healing, holistic practices, raised my awareness to what I was consuming, both, around me in my life, the people in my life, and also sort of what I was putting in my body, which, to be honest with you, I was a meticulous eater. I have disordered eating in my history as well. But also I worked out all the time. And here I was in just so much pain that I didn't know how I was going to keep going on. And, my husband used to have to sort of manipulate my leg and my body and my hip every day. And my daughters were watching that. And I was it was sort of this culmination of one of the darkest periods of my life.
A lot of that is kind of brings me to my past. I too had a period of time that, my young son at the time was seeing, and I've asked him since, what kind of memories do you have from that? What happened as a result of seeing me so in pain and unable to do for myself? So it kind of brought up like, oh, I really feel for you, because I have been there, and it's not a place you want to be. And it really, I can only imagine what you're going to say is your next step. But for me, it was, I have to find a way better than this. This is not how this story is told. This is not what I want my son to see and to take away from this, is that this is just how life is. That's not the answer here. So I want to hear the rest of the story.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're right. Cause I was like, I'm not, I was seeing multiple physicians, and a lot of it was like, well, who's going to help me run again? Because what do I do without running? That was actually part of my identity. It was part of my coping. And, this is really coming back to energy and mindset. Was, we all develop different coping strategies for how we navigate life. And just because something helped us cope in our 20s, in our 30s, doesn't mean that, that is going to help us keep coping. And I actually am, I'm glad for my pain. That is a really weird thing to say, but I am glad for my darkness, because it was my darkness that helped me change my life. And what was really going on at the time here was I had a tremendous amount of unrealized, unprocessed childhood trauma. I had lived in a false reality for 30 years of my, now 45 years of my life. And I was working in a career that was no longer serving me. And it served me really well for a long time, but it no longer served me. And the pain that I felt with the loss of these family members, but also my own personal health crisis, is what helped me start and build the business that is gaining more and more momentum every day. That helps other women sort of, understand themselves, gain love and compassion for themselves, care for themselves in mind, body, and spirit, understand what, lights up their spirit, but sort of like teaches them to take care of themselves and ground themselves energetically, so that they can just be less anxious and be less stressed. Because I said to a client yesterday, chronic stress is like our new cigarettes. It's just like a really invisible, a really socially accepted and invisible drug. Because for a lot of us, we don't know what it's like not to be chronically stressed. And I will say, like, I haven't met a mom yet who's not stressed, but I was holding this chronic stress before I had my children. They certainly have expanded it in a different way. But I really sort of thank my children regularly that they picked me as their mom, because without them and without the pain I endured following their having them, I mean, I'm a truly better woman. And I do believe it is my purpose to serve, to support other women in their healing journey as well. And so that being said, I did start dabbling into energy work, and it really sort of came from like a mind perspective. So the processing of trauma, unpacking trauma mentally, which I've done through several people. I have worked with your typical mental health professional, licensed social worker. But I've also worked, and I still work with, a lot of energetic mentors. So spiritual mentors who, sort of opened me up to think about, how my physical pain in my body was connected to one of my energy channels. So if you look at my logo of my business, it's the symbol for the root chakra. We have 7 chakras in our bodies. They're just energy channels within us, starting at our head down to our tailbone. And it very much, I still navigate having a blocked root chakra. But what's typical of a blocked root chakra is, or imbalanced root chakra, is lower extremity ailments. And so what I find to this day is when I'm feeling not grounded, because the root chakra is responsible for our grounding and stability, what keeps us feeling safe. When I know when I'm going through life and I'm not feeling safe in my body, even though for my mind it may not be obvious, I get a little tinge in my hip. I get a little tinge in my hip, or I may even get a UTI out of nowhere. Or, I happen to be struggling with perimenopause. My perimenopause symptoms have been very intense at some points. And truthfully, I address them from a Western perspective, but I always address them through, an energetic perspective. And I do believe that this is something I want, and why I am overjoyed to speak about this with you is energy is science, right? We all carry energetic charge. There is energy around us. My cup has energy to it. Our different belongings have energy to it. And, if you have belongings around you and they don't remind you of really happy things or pleasant things, it's like giving yourself permission to remove it from your space. So, and to me, this is a far cry and a big difference from the world I grew up in, which was very linear. You have a career, you climb a ladder, you do this job, and that's your life. And a lot of people are like that. And now doing this energy work, it's more about my own energy, understanding how to protect my energy when I'm absorbing other people's energy, sort of getting into, well, is that mine? Did I absorb somebody else? And I will be honest, I know now that I'm just a big sponge for other people's energy. And that comes from my life and my journey. And, one of my biggest things that I have to do to take care of myself is protecting my energy.
I'm amazed, you and I should talk about just kind of how similar some of our experiences are. A lot of that I was thinking, amen, sister. I know, particularly when I know you and I have talked before about perimenopause, and Lord have mercy, is that like, my goodness, that's a whole journey of its own, right? But yet
that is a full podcast. Yes.
And it's always sandwiched right between motherhood and taking care of parents and in the time of our life. It's like, who thought this up? But but I really love what you said about how, this isn't how you grew up or knew about, like, this isn't something that you ever knew anything about, or really, you didn't say this, but trusted. And I think that's kind of where I'm from is, this was really different when I started even dabbling in this world. And it sounds very woo woo, right? I've had friends be like, oh, they think I'm tree hugging granola, just whatever. And, I am more so now than I used to be, because tree hugging grounds you, and granola is good for you. But there's becoming more and more evidence, scientific evidence to prove what you're saying now, even though this has been used for years and years. And, as you said, this is Eastern, they didn't need all that. They just knew that it worked when they did it. And, they felt led to do it. And so, I would like to talk a little bit about, all the ways that you help women kind of get into this. Right now I'm taking one of your Thrive in 5 series that I love, and I think it's really showing how to add every day 5 minutes for yourself. You do a lot to help women, and I really appreciate that. Your passion comes through. That's kind of how you and I even got to know each other, is I was really noticing online, and I truly believe, because I curate my social feed to be things that feed me, lift me up, that give me something that isn't just, people complaining. Sometimes there's cats. There's a lot of cats in between that, but yes, there's a lot of,
I'm a cat person. I get that.
a lot of education. But so you teach and you show, but you also explain kind of how, like, this is an option, it's something you can try. There's really no setback, like there's not side effects, like, you're not going to have a session and then have a bad fish burp, or you're not going to have diarrhea or something. Like, this is, it kind of really, either it works for you, or I guess in some cases it doesn't, but I've never really heard anybody that didn't say it worked on some level, if I'm being honest. And I've really appreciated working with you because you have an intuitive component that I find to really enhance what you do. And you really pick up on, because for me, I get stuck. Like, I do a lot of prayer, I do a lot of meditation, I do a lot of kind of like, what would this be telling me? Why is the pain there? When did this come on? What have I been doing? What am I thinking and feeling? But sometimes I get stuck. It's like I can't see it for myself. My friend, my son, they come to me and I'm like, oh, okay, it's on that side, it's there. When did this happen? Like, I can kind of help other people pinpoint it, but for myself, I get stuck. And exactly, like, okay, this is what's going on. And I'm like, yes, that is what's going on. And we haven't even discussed it. How truly awesome is that? So I just really appreciate that. But yeah, your passion comes through, and you have a lot of avenues for people to seek healing or more balance in their life. And I guess if you wouldn't mind talking a little bit about how you can help people to get that healing or that balance in their life.
Yes, and thank you for that invitation to share. So, when I started my business, it really started with food and movement. Okay. Like, a lot of people, amidst my pharma jobs, people would like stop at my desk and everybody would just stop to tell me, like, oh, Gina, I thought of you the other day because I went to the gym and I knew you'd be so proud of me. Or, Gina, I made a really good choice about what I made for dinner that night. And you were in my head. And that is truly my superpower. And actually, if I could record every person that says to me, I heard you saying, so that is my superpower. A lot of times in business, they ask you, like, what's your superpower? My voice and what I say to people stays within their brains for a really long time. And so I'm proud of that power, and it's for good. So when I work with someone, and I work with people in a few different ways. I've run some online women's circles. I talk a lot about the mother wound. The mother wound, just really quickly, is, sort of like at multiple levels. It has to do with, one of the components is, impact to your own mothering, but it is also sort of a collective expectation of women and mothers and what we should and shouldn't be and look like. But it's sort of characterized by, you never feel like you're doing enough. You do everything for everybody else and have nothing left for yourself. You have little or no boundaries. And you have a really loud inner critic. And I say all the time, like, my mother wound was running my show for a long time. And I was what I believe was making me sick. And ultimately, when I decided to leave my job and start this business, it was because I had a passion for health and supporting people through health. But my own body was telling me that I needed to stop doing what I was doing because my nervous system was stuck in the on position for a long time. And that is the chronic stress. And when I say nervous system, I'm talking about your trauma response. So when you are in danger, your body has this scanning, your hypervigilance. You're constantly scanning your surroundings. If you have been through trauma, and there are big T traumas, there are little T traumas. One of my little T traumas is like this really unfortunate event when I was 6 about, trying out for a school play, and the teacher sort of said, no, you can't do that. And you're going to be this instead. And, it was the Wicked Witch of the West. I cleared that energy about a year ago. And this was when I was 6 years old. But, these little T traumas that sort of, impact us, and everybody has them. So if somebody says, well, I don't have any trauma, like, we all have trauma. And especially you've just lived through a pandemic. That was a very traumatic time for
Right.
all of us. and it varied, but you know, what became clear to me from my physical body, because once I stopped being able to have running as an outlet, I had to sit in my body more. You know, running sort of, I remember going through runs where I would leave upset about something that happened at the office, and I'd get home and be like, I had sorted through so much in my mind through that run that I almost didn't remember where I had run. I just knew that I felt better. And that's sort of a dissociation, right? And many of us, whether we like it or know it or not, we do a lot of dissociating. And so some of us choose to dissociate and cope through exercise. Some of us dissociate through using alcohol or drugs or scrolling social media. But we're calming our body down when we're doing that. Whether you know it or not, you're calming your body down. Your nervous system, you know, is in an activated state for whatever reason, at whatever level, based on you, your life, your journey. And what I'll tell you, and I know I'm not alone in this, is back in 2019, when I was on the brink of like, I need to change something, I don't know what to change, my nervous system was stuck on. I was having trouble sleeping. My heart was always racing. I was always shallow breathing. I had been riddled with stomach aches my entire life from childhood. That was how my anxiety manifested. But now I knew in my body, like my intuition said, if you don't change, you are going to be very sick very soon. And that was like a big wake up call for me. And, you know, it sort of, a lot of things lined up for me to be able to leave my full-time job. And I said, well, what am I going to do? I had sat on my couch in 2018 and said, I really want to start my own business, but like, what do I have to offer? Well, I have a natural gift for keeping people accountable to themselves. And so when I work with people, I'm honestly working with you to guide you back to yourself. And I feel like I have this little invisible mirror where I'm just showing you you. I'm just showing you you, and I'm giving you guidance around how to, you know, sort of understand you, like who you are, how you got that way, and, you know, what do you want to change? And so a lot of people come to me like, I want to lose weight. Will you help me lose weight? I actually don't advertise as a weight loss coach. I really have a lot of issue with weight from my personal experience, but how I see a number on a scale destroying women everywhere all the time. And, you know, I'm of the opinion that if you are caring for yourself the best you can, the best you are able to, there is no, you know, line for everybody. And then it comes down to mindset and loving yourself. And so if someone signs on for me for, I usually ask for 4 months, like give me 4 months and let me help you shift in that 4 months. What I do is I bring them through accountability, through practices to having a good backbone of nutrition, nourishing food, and then moving their body regularly. And then I start observing with, so where I have, you know, my clients capture all of this, I start seeing trends. And I bring the trends up, like, I noticed you didn't eat on Tuesday. I noticed you haven't moved. I noticed that you drink a lot of wine. Tell me about that. And what ends up happening is it just sort of unfolds for the person from there. But what I'm also teaching and integrating into this exercise is a gratitude practice, morning and evening rituals, grounding practices, core strength. So, you know, my physical issues were spiritual, but they were also physical. I had had 2 children. I had had 2 C-sections. No one supports women postpartum to say, yes, great, take care of your baby, but hey, I'm going to take you aside an hour a week to like help you repair your core of your body. Right. Cutting your ab muscles is a change to your body. And so I do a lot of that work. So I am a personal trainer, I'm a yoga instructor, I'm a big advocate for movement as a way to move energy. I do not promise six packs. I do not promise weight loss. I do see weight loss.
Yeah.
I do have clients who lift their shirt and say, hey, I can see my abs. Awesome. But that's not what my business, that is not the goal of my business. It is internal healing, healing from within out. You build muscle from within out, you balance your muscles. Yoga, I think, is one of, and I was a person who was like, yoga's never for me. It's not enough.
Yeah.
And now I do yoga 2 to 3 times a week. I have to do it. But I now sort of use tools like journaling and crystals, and sitting against trees, and going into the woods or going to the beach, putting my phone away, to disconnect, because if there's anything I know is that moms and women overall, even if you don't have children, you may be caring for an elderly parent. One of my best friends has no children, but she cares for her elderly father. And sometimes I think it's harder. But she's, this person in particular, like I see the same pattern in her as I do someone with children, is that this constant self-sacrifice really only comes at a detriment to us in mind and body. So I really start off with a nutrition and movement backbone, and then it really sort of evolves into like understanding your mind and your thought patterns. And, I cover like money and scarcity issues. Like a lot of us have money mindset issues. And by the way, everything that I work with people on, like I have navigated myself. And I think at the end of the day, why I'm good at this work is like, I see people, I let people feel seen, and sort of not feel like that they're crazy. So many women go to the doctor and they're like, I just don't feel good. I can't stop being tired. Well, sometimes I think that exhaustion comes from doing nothing that feeds your soul. And, it's just so important. So, but at the crux of it is energy.
Yeah. Gosh, I love that you went in a lot of areas that I kind of wanted to touch on a little bit. You can help women in a lot of different ways. And what I love about it is, kind of how I came to you was I kind of identified a way that I wanted to work with you, and kind of step my toe into the water, if you will, partially because my time and just kind of not knowing what I wanted to do, but I could definitely use your help in all those areas. And I think most people do. You talked about movement, and I have to say that over the last probably 2 years, I've come to a revelation about movement. My background with people saying you should exercise, you should run, you should walk, you should do all these things, it always came across as you should, and for no other reason that they were morally superior and that they did it, so that made them awesome, so you should do it, otherwise you're just a slob. It was never explained how there's so many benefits to just moving. Like you said, just move, whatever that looks like. That could be, if right now it's difficult or painful to get up out of your chair, just work on getting out of your chair, or work on, mobility to the degree that you can. I mean, I would say if it's that bad, you probably need to work with a physical therapist or someone, to really make sure you're not making things worse. But in other words, that movement helps energetically, as you mentioned, but it helps physically, it helps your hormones, it helps your depression, it helps so many things. The body is meant to move. That much I am now satisfied with, between the studies and knowing the benefits. So when you say move, what I also love about it, because you talked about accountability, is I've seen other accountability experts, and the message it kind of comes across to me is, you didn't do this. Why? Where is this? I need to see this. Like, it's very harsh. It's very abrasive. And I don't do harsh and abrasive anymore. You talked about trauma. I have been diagnosed with severe complex PTSD. I don't do harsh anymore. I don't do running because that feels too harsh. I don't do rigid exercise and cardio with people like, you got to burn it to lose it. You got to, like, I'm not doing that. And I love that you meet people where they're at. Like, it never comes across in your accountability like why didn't you do that? Why do you, like you said, you invite the conversation so that basically it kind of blossoms for them as to, well, wait a minute, why did I do that? Or why is every Tuesday I'm not getting enough water? What's going on Tuesday? Like, it just kind of helps them see. And the best way to come at a self-realization is through kind of being walked through, but you do the process, right? Not someone else just yelling at you and telling you what it is. That doesn't work for me. I think some people do seem to like that or want that, but that's not me. And I think that anyone who might be kind of trepidatious at working with someone about accountability, because just the word accountability kind of makes me bristle a little bit, because it's like, I don't know if I need somebody else. I don't know if I appreciate that too much, but I like how you do it. It's very gentle, and it's more like you care. Like you said, you just want people to have their best life. And if this seems to be something that might be kind of a hurdle or a problem, let's just investigate it a little bit. So I love that you said that and brought that out. And again, you and I have worked on energetic, probably exclusively, but there's so much that you offer, and I'm kind of looking forward to, circling back around. It's just, as you know, this year has been kind of crazy for me, with a lot of dramatic change kind of happening. So is there anything that you wanted to cover that we didn't cover so far?
Well, I actually like to add to like hope, health, and wellness and advocacy about sort of what I do talk about my clients with, is being their own health advocate with their physicians and asking questions. Yeah. So let me segue there. So, one thing I do end up default talking to my clients about is when you go to the doctor or go to your GYN or ask for this, so I'm very into hormones, like, part of my own journey has been, I stopped sleeping. Like I just was having these 2 to 3 hour bouts of insomnia consistently every night. I think it's going back like 3 or 4 years now. And I went to a naturopath because I may have said this to my primary care. And I think my overall message is, before I launch into this, is you have to ask questions. You have to listen to your body. You have to advocate for yourself, because, I think doctors are very intelligent, highly trained people, but they are not the end all be all, right? They are trained. They have their work experience, but every individual demands something different. And what I find in Western medicine, which is an integral part of our society, it's not going away, right. But I do think Western can like meet, spirituality and Eastern medicine, like we can do both. And that is sort of what I always invite people to do. And actually what we've talked about as it relates to oncology research, which I'll get to in a second. But we have to be our own advocates. A lot of times people go to the doctor and they're told, your labs are fine, go home, enjoy your life. But I'm not enjoying my life. You're
within range. I love that.
You're in range. Right. It happens for me all the time. Well, let's just do some blood work. And my blood work is thankfully always beautiful. And I say, well, that doesn't answer my question. So it's not being found in the labs. Or, for me with this insomnia issue, it was my progesterone was like in the toilet. And my estrogen was normal. And, even though the estrogen is normal, it's creating an estrogen dominant space within us. And estrogen dominance has side effects like insomnia. And, I was losing my hair. I was gaining weight around my belly. And this is what, and, perimenopause and menopause are like, they're still a little hush hush, but I'm one of those people talking about it a lot, because I'm like, could someone have prepared me for this? Like, I didn't know this was coming.
Amen.
Right.
Preach about it. Yes.
So, like, I am going to be a person who talks about it. And I've had a lot of people reach out to me to be like, Who do you go to? And you know what? Sometimes information is powerful, right? I have been on all different kind of supplements. I've been on progesterone creams. Do you know what it comes down to? My stress. It comes down to my stress because my cortisol has been high. When our bodies get our bodies can, like, they travel when we're producing hormones, they come to this crossroads, and it can either make progesterone or testosterone. And what can happen is, if there's too much cortisol, it throws off the production of progesterone, and your progesterone doesn't have a chance to make itself. The cortisol is dominating inside of your body, which causes anxiety. So you're anxious, your cortisol high. Now your cortisol high, you're more anxious. But women deserve to understand their bodies and what's going on, but you will get a lot of resistance from your primary care. I've been there firsthand. My GYN, with my perimenopausal symptoms, was really frustrated with me because I've had a lot of reservations about synthetic hormones. And she said, well, you should just opt for a partial hysterectomy. Not the answer I was looking for. It's just not a game. But this is, they only know what they know, right? Like, they have been trained in a certain way, and that is fine. It is not knocking them. But my point is you have to ask questions, and you have to understand all of your options. Now, where it comes in with cancer research for me is, and it is gaining some steam, is integrative medicine in oncology trials and oncology treatments. So, I was having this discussion with a colleague of mine in pharma to say, well, why aren't we adding Reiki into a clinical trial? Why aren't we giving every cancer patient a mindset coach? Because I know I've watched people with terminal cancer wither away mentally, because as they're sitting there waiting for the cancer to consume them. I mean, I've watched it. And I know, in my opinion, that cancer survival hinges upon believing that you can beat it. So yes, chemotherapy is here to stay, and we are always looking for better chemotherapies to treat cancer and different types of cancer. But we have to understand the role the mind plays in our will to live. And if someone says to you, your road is over, your mind is going to say, my road is over. Why am I going to fight? And the easiest example of that I can give is Dr. Nicole LaPera, the holistic psychologist, put a great book out. I really like her. She has some controversy around her.
I love her.
Yeah.
I don't know what the controversy is. She's great.
Yes, it was, I think everybody, and anybody who's great comes with critics,
yeah.
with critics. But she gave an example in her book where a gentleman was told he had 6 months to live. He had esophageal cancer. He died in 6 months. They did an autopsy, and he had no cancer in his body. He had no cancer in his body, but his mind believed he did. And our minds are so powerful. And, when you were talking about, the accountability and, you don't need someone sort of like criticizing you. No, you don't. And to me, people like us, I won't speak for you, I'll speak for me. My inner critic is already going, right? Like, I'm having to turn her down a lot. I don't need to pay somebody money to give me more criticism. And that is not my style. My style is actually trying to understand at an emotional level, why don't you have internal motivation to get up and, have this 10-minute practice in the morning, or, to sort of put both nourishing food in your mouth as well as a container of cookies. So I just can't stay away from the cookies. And I'm like, emotionally, what are the cookies doing for you inside? Right? Because they're doing something. They're comforting. So many of us have been comfort eaters. I certainly can be a comfort eater, although I will say, like, that is something that has evolved for me, that I sort of am like, am I hungry or bored? But it's more for me of when people struggle with some of these practices, it is emotional to me. It is something lacking inside. It is something missing. A lot of times it's like just like soul, like nothing is feeding their soul. And that is sort of, that's how I dig in with people. And we all have had enough inner critic to last a lifetime, many of us. So, no, I actually teach women to be loving and compassionate to themselves. And I do the same work for myself. Like, I'm learning still to be more loving and compassionate for myself after, my inner critic really served me really well, but then she was making me sick.
I can so relate. And I don't know if it's because we're both Virgos, but I do know that you're exactly right. I mean, the inner critic is something I've had to learn to really, and in fact, at one point, one therapist actually said that I had like a whole team of them. It wasn't just one. There was a whole cacophony of critics going off. And so it's a process. And I like what you said about the integration with chemo. I'm a firm believer that Western medicine definitely has its place. Like, I know when I had blood clots and I had to have emergency surgery and they needed to handle that immediately, there's no other, all the other stuff would have been great. I asked people for prayers and Reiki and all the energy healing I could, but I also went into the hospital and had surgeries and also had, filters placed and all of the blood thinners and all of that. That was necessary. If I'd have broken a bone, emergency Western medicine is the best. There's no doubt about that. But in addition to that is the energy and the Reiki and everything you talked about. There's also, you mentioned a naturopath earlier, and I'm not certain, it's been a while. I used to work at a naturopathic medical college, and then with the organization that's over all of the schools. I don't remember if Massachusetts has licensed naturopathic doctors. Here we have licensed naturopathic doctors that go to the same, rigors of a medical doctor, regular medical doctor or a DO.
Yes.
And there's a couple of doctors that I'd love to interview at some point, that they are naturopathic doctors that work with oncologists and with cancer patients to mitigate like the nausea, the hair loss, the deep fatigue, all of the symptoms that we think about with cancer treatment and how it can be prohibitive. My mother had breast cancer, and one of the first things she says is, I'm not doing anything. I'm not losing my hair. And I thought, well, I mean, to be fair, she had a mastectomy. So, she took action. She just wasn't going to take that action. And she lived for a long time after that. I'm amazed. That's not the norm, I don't think. But I've heard other people to say, I don't want chemo. I'm not going through all of that. I saw my, fill in the blank, my aunt, uncle, mom, dad, whatever, go through that. I'm not going through that. And I think if people knew, it doesn't have to be that bad. There is support. There is a holistic approach to it. As you said, research every day is getting better and better with both the prognosis of treatment, but also how that treatment, occurs. So I did just want to mention that, because I'm a firm believer that all medicines are there and helpful. I just think, as you noted, nobody tells you. That's the problem. Is I don't think there's enough people talking. You talked about perimenopause. Nobody wants to talk about it. I agree with that. Because I've been evidently navigating this water for longer than I thought, but it being called other things or handled different ways. And now I'm starting to go, let's just call this what it is. I get it. I'm perimenopausal, I'm menopausal, my hormones are all over the place. And let's talk about it. What does that look like? What should it look like? And I love that you brought up and explained very eloquently how stress like short circuits your hormones, and nobody talks about that. And I will say, I've never gone to a medical doctor, traditional medical doctor, that ever thought of that, talked to me about it, explained it at all. It's only ever been, and honestly, I've seen I couldn't tell you, at least a handful of naturopathic doctors. It was my sort of studying and going, what is this? We get to a state and I feel pretty like I'm resilient. I've got a little air, an area, it can dip, it can get higher, but I'm okay. And then all of a sudden out of nowhere, my health just takes a deep dive and nobody seems to know why or where it came from. And I look fine on the test. And what I was able to figure out through, unfortunately, multiple crises were it was stress. After a stressful period, give it about 1 to 2 months, and you'll see how everything just takes a dive. And oh, what was that? Hormones. How were the hormones before? How were the hormones after? What was it affecting that? Cortisol, just like you said. So you don't know these things, and the doctors don't have time to tell you. I don't think, like you said, the doctors go into this, they're trained very well, very rigorous. They know a lot. They're doing the best they can, but they just don't have the time. And to be honest too, I feel like there's those of us that are chronic and we're motivated to learn, like you said, I don't want my daughter seeing me like this. This has got to be different. I'm going to do something different. I don't know that in a doctor's day-to-day, the average person they see feels that way. I can definitely say I've known people, been very close with people who are like, well, I guess that's how it is. I guess I'm getting older, or I guess that's what happens when you turn 30. And I'm like, 30? And you're needing to replace parts. Like you said, I've done everything I can to avoid surgery. I do not want surgery. I mean, clearly when I had blood clots, okay, we had to have surgery, but that was it. And I did have C-section with my son, okay. Again, Western medicine was helpful, but when they were like, oh, let's just, exploratory, or as you said, do a hysterectomy, because I was having a little problems with, I guess it wasn't little problems, but blood thinners did not help all of the blood flow. So first thing they wanted to do was hysterectomy. And I'm just like, that's what we go to? Like, are there a few steps before that? And can we look at what caused this and how we can maybe help that, and I can't tell you surgeries for my son over the years, from minor to major, that they wanted to do. And I'm like, I mean, no, I don't feel comfortable with that. Other people may, and I'm very happy that it's available, that there's surgeons that study and know how to do surgeries for people that is their answer, but that I don't immediately jump to that. So just love that there is integration, and that's what I'm for, is know what's available, know how they can help and complement each other, and then go forth with how you feel best for that. And I appreciate so much that you work hard on your social and in your newsletter and through doing interviews like this, with getting that message out of what's available, knowing what can go wrong that you don't even have a clue about, so that okay, well, if it's stress, if it's cortisol, that's kind of a hormone, maybe I need to see, I don't know, an endocrinologist, or I need to at least have a primary that can take those labs and see, and maybe we can run through. I think honestly, you'd probably say it was an ND or a naturopathic doctor that helped you with the cortisol, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Right?
A few. Yeah. And a couple of things just to capitalize on what you said. I've worked with both naturopaths, ODs, and functional nurse practitioners. And, they're the ones who I've really sort of learned so much around. And I've also done some food sensitivity tests, which, to be honest, I just saw somebody say they're a waste of money. I don't think they're a waste of money. They actually were very validating to what I already knew. But there needs to be more of a consistent search for the root cause, rather than just band-aiding a problem. That has always been my thing. And the one thing I will say is that I do believe still to this day, MDs only receive about 20% of their education around food and nutrition, amidst their
That's true. So
training.
naturopathic doctors do get quite a bit more. I'd have to look up exactly how much. I want to say it's like 60, 80 hours or more, maybe
Right.
even more. I want to say maybe it was 120. It's been a while since I've been in that. I looked that up, but they definitely have a huge, educational period for nutrition alone. And kind of, I think what you said in your social before, that food is medicine. And what you put in there, just like if it were a medicine, if it's a drink, it has an effect. And so you have to at least know and be aware, food coloring, preservatives, all these things, they have an effect. They have a cumulative effect, so.
100%. And that's what it is. It is the repetitive dosing, if you will. Like, I mean, dairy and gluten, they're kind of like one of my like biggest sticking points, and something that, I sort of trudge around within my own home and my own body, because I love pizza and ice cream. I love pizza and ice cream. I have done plenty of eliminations and removing things. And, one thing, and full disclosure, I had some food sensitivity tests done, and I'm doing a candida detox because I've had this candida overgrowth in my gut. We didn't touch on that. I wanted to add during the oncology piece is like, when a cancer patient's going through treatment, like, is anybody worrying about their gut? Do you hear much about, well, let's make sure that their gut stays stable because we're wiping through, we're putting a cytotoxic drug through their system that is wiping out your gut.
Yeah.
And the gut is responsible, like your gut is connected to your brain and your mental health, right? It's all connected, but no one's talking about gut health for cancer patients, at least that I have seen. And I'm happy to be proven wrong. And please show me the study or the data. But, I don't not, so I've done this detox, and I lost like a few pounds, and I was like, I lost pounds of joy. Like, food is joyful. Pizza is joyful. Ice cream is joyful. But it is a fine line because
I have to say, I had a reaction when you said that, because I've never heard anyone say it. And I firmly believe that. And as someone who grew up with no affection and sort of a really dysfunctional household, food was definitely joy. The only joy I knew.
It is for a lot of people.
Up. So it can be joyful, maybe in a dysfunctional, like that's how you're handling things, but it can also just be joyful. You eat with friends, you eat with family. Thanksgiving's coming up. That's exactly, for
It's
some of us. Maybe some family gatherings are not so joyful, but
no. Yeah. But, I think, aside from this detox, will I, and it's almost done, but, will I go back to, like, I don't eat pizza and ice cream every day because it actually makes me sick. It makes my stomach upset. Dairy is very inflammatory to the body. Gluten's inflammatory to the body. Everyone's like, oh, don't demonize different things. I'm not demonizing it. It is science. It is science that these ingredients cause inflammation in the body. Chronic inflammation wills disease into the body. There is no debating that. And there's tons of science to prove it.
I completely agree with you.
Right. So, it's like I do believe, and I say to people, like, I've worked with a lot of people have had disordered eating. I actually worked with someone, and this is just a little plug for my work, but, I work with someone who actually went to a eating disordered psychiatrist for years. And the work I did with this person, she said, I have worked with therapists and food specialty therapists, and you are the only one that has changed my perspective on this, because we adopt these food rules and food stories from society, from the people we live with. And I truly, truly believe we should be able to eat anything we want. My only thing is, and this is where I use my intuition, and I try to guide people to use their intuition, where you're eating, you don't feel good. Oh, maybe I need to back off of this. Maybe I need to back off of this. But we know restriction doesn't work. Everybody knows that. But I do think, there's so much value to knowing your body, knowing yourself, knowing how different foods impact you. And yeah, I'm in the business of disease prevention. I spent years reacting to illness, and I want to do more prevention where we keep the inflammation in your body low, move your energy around, and really like feed your soul and cater to your mindset. Your inner critic doesn't need any more fuel. Like she doesn't. And she's going to always creep up, but it's having the strength to sort of strength and awareness to recognize that, oh, that's my inner critic again. I'm just going to let her sort of, I'm going to put her to the side because she's not going away, but I'm just not going to let her have so much power over me in my mind.
I absolutely love that. I mean, it's almost the perfect ending to our time together, how you put that together. I do just want to say you touched on something that I think I want to highlight, and that is, if people are starting out, they haven't had any kind of alternative, holistic, functional, anything. They aren't sure about it. One of the things you said was you have to know yourself. You have to get to know yourself and know what works for you and what you need, and from food to the type of doctor to the type of medicine to, there's a ton of energy work that you could do. There's a ton of naturopathic work, homeopathic work. You have to find that out. And I love how and I think people like us who have gone through the worst and we found a way to have hope and to overcome, we are looking to help. We're all walking each other home. We are looking to help and find people that we can take by the hand and say, this is how you do it. This is what you need. This is what you want. And I love that you're one of those. That's why I wanted to introduce you to my audience. I want people to know that you are available, but there's people like you, and that this is safe. This is safe work if they want to try it. And I'm a proof of that. I've not only used all kinds of energy work, but I've worked with you personally, and I really recommend you. So
thank you. That is such an honor. Thank you for saying that.
Thank you. So, and I appreciate so much that you came today to allow me to do this. So as I've said before, I'm no James Lipton, but I like to ask people who get in the hot seat if they will share a few things. And one of the things I like to ask is a recipe that you either really like or want to share for our audience. And so I'd like to ask you if you have a recipe that you'd like to share.
Yes. So this is the most basic of basic, but I'm going to give the audience why I am passionate about this. I am really passionate about cheeseburgers. I think a cheeseburger is like the perfect meal because it has a mix of all of your different food groups, and including, the forbidden refined carbs of a nice good roll for your cheeseburger. But it has protein, it has some, dairy protein. You can put tomatoes, lettuce, onions. I prefer grass-fed beef. It just tastes better to me. And we know that, that beef is holding more nutrients than, non-grass-fed beef. And it's hormone free, and we don't need to add any hormones into our bodies. But, cheeseburgers kind of get a bad rap, and they're not that, you get some people who are like, have villainized red meat. I happen to be on the page of like, periodic red meat is great for us. I've tried to do without it, and my body in particular needs red meat. I think that varies for everybody.
Yes.
So what I'll say is get yourself some grass-fed beef, form a patty, put salt, pepper, and garlic powder on. You can grill it, and then cheeseburger with the works. Like, this is a good meal. A little sweet potato fries on the side, some simple carbs give you good energy. This is a delicious meal. Air fried sweet potatoes, even better. Yeah. So that is like one of my favorite meals. I've been said, oh, wow, you eat that? Like, I would never have thought that. I eat everything, I promise. There has been times where I have cut different foods out of my life, and I will not do that anymore. And that is a culture that I'm trying to create, is we all should be able to have what we want, but by understanding yourself and your body, you can intuitively navigate the things you eat based on how and what works for you.
I so appreciate that. Yes, cheeseburgers have redeeming qualities, and in moderation, particularly. So I'm thankful you came up with that. Okay, so the next thing I like to ask is the best advice you've given and the best advice you've received, if you don't mind sharing.
Yes. So I'm going to cover this because one of them, the first one is it goes both ways because I've received it and I actually give it. And that is become an observer of yourself and actually do it in a non-judgmental way. Do it from a position of neutrality. Just watch you. When do you get upset? Who upsets you? How do you feel in your body when you are getting ready in the morning, when you are going to bed at night? Observe without judgment and sort of get curious. So someone said that to me, become an observer. And the reason for that is when you are constantly in autopilot living in your life, right? And I'm talking about I'm talking about increasing your consciousness. So many of society, the consciousness is turned down where you are in autopilot, you are in survival mode, you are just getting through every day. And by becoming an observer of you and your patterns, you are raising your consciousness. And that sort of gives you a lens to you and your life and like what works and what doesn't work by just watching without judgment. So become an observer of yourself. That is the best advice I've given, and I give it out quite frequently. I sort of think about it as like just passing it forward. And then one of my own is pick something every day about your body to love. Because, and I mean, I think men can be pretty critical of their bodies as well, but I am in the business of women and body positivity. And I want you to get up every morning or go to bed every night and be like, thank you, heart, for beating all day. Thank you, body, for getting out of bed. Thank you, eyes, for seeing. Thank you, ears, for listening. You name it. Your body is working. And even amidst the hardest, most tumultuous times, darkest times of your life, your body deserves gratitude, because I truly know and believe that your body hears everything. And when you're constantly cutting it down, the body will revolt. And it will revolt like lower back pain, headaches, chest pain, you name it. And I'm not a physician. I'm not telling you to go to the doctor, not go to the doctor. Please go to the doctor if you're concerned. But I really do believe that the body speaks and that there is a spiritual component. It's connected to your energy channels. And I call it with my training clients, I say, I'm a spiritual trainer, because when you tell me something hurts, I think about what I can do to sort of help you alleviate that discomfort from like a muscle strength perspective and flexibility perspective, but also sort of like mindset wise, like, yeah, your lower back hurts. I can help you strengthen your core, but how do I ground you? And then I teach you grounding practices to do in parallel. So I really do feel like I'm someone who sort of marries Western and, spirituality and Eastern medicine.
I love that. I love your advice. And I have to tell you why. So when you talked about observing, one of the first things that psychologically, I've been in therapy for many years. Again, we talked about trauma, being able to get out of reactive mode, being able to have that pause started with observing. Just when you're talking, like at one point it seemed like I could never do it, and now I can actually have a conversation but also observe and kind of say, okay, we need a breath, we need to swallow to engage our parasympathetic nervous system, all those things. But I mean, it took a while, but the first step was observe. So I think that's a huge step in the right direction for anyone. And then your advice of thanking your body, that's something I've had to learn. I have been really down on my body. I don't feel like it represents me right now the way that I would like to be represented. And I feel like there's things about it, but let me tell you, this body helped me birth an amazing boy. It helped me to, I'm going to cry now thinking about it, all the things that my body's done that, like I said, so many health crises, and so many times I've had doctors to say straight to my face, you should be dead. And I'm not. This body's persevered. It helped me. It was the tool that got me here. So I'm very thankful. And I've had to learn to express that and to show that love, not just thank it, communicate that, but to show it. That's what I'm doing now more as I get a chance. It's some people call it a beauty regime at night, putting on, different things, but it's my way of showing my body, I love you and I appreciate you. And this is, how I take care of you. And so I think it's an important thing from a spiritual loving perspective, because you're right, your body's kind of like any person. Your body's like your friend. Like if you just kept dumping on your friend's not going to stay there. Your friend's going to, be hurt and offended. And why wouldn't your body be hurt and offended when it's working really hard for you? You may not see that, may not be that you're the Olympian you thought you were going to be or whatever, but I also look at, well, what was I doing to myself? A lot of times there was things I was doing to myself. I didn't know it. I didn't know that copious amounts of ibuprofen for 25, 30 years. Oh, gee, imagine that would have an effect, right? Or all the times I was doing antibiotics for years at a time. And probiotics, what's that? Maybe you shouldn't just treat everything with antibiotics. Like there was things that I didn't know that now I know. But now that I know better, I do better. And I think that it's very important that we do show that love to our body. So I 100% appreciate you bringing that up and telling us about that. I so appreciate our time together. Clearly, we could have talked for hours.
I know, I love it.
There was so much that we pulled up that I would love to deep dive more, because I think there's, perimenopause alone, anxiety. Maybe if you could just take a minute to tell us, who do you work with? Like what, I know you worked with me for, I've had grief with my mom. You've helped me with that. You've helped me with just kind of not knowing, like I'm feeling weird, feeling like I don't know what my future is. Can you help me with that? What are other things that you help people, they come to you with, that you can help them through?
I mean, I really do work with high achieving perfectionists, sort of just high anxiety women. I sort of like see myself working with a lot of corporate women. I would say most of the people I've worked with have had alcoholism in their past, whether it's themselves or a parent or just someone who they spent a lot of time around. And what I see from that is, some of us use perfectionism and productivity and overachieving to sort of help us feel safe, because our bodies have been through trauma, through different experiences. And, I sort of always remark to myself, like most of the people I sit across from have had alcoholism touch their lives. And I do really, what I've told people in the past is I can sort of walk. I mean, this is coming back to energy and me and what I feel and my intuition. And, I can be in someone's energy and feel that they've been through something. And just, I'm one of those people that people meet me, I start talking and people start telling me their life story and, sort of leave me like, wow, I feel great. Like that was such a good conversation. And I'm a healer. I believe that's my purpose. I believe I sort of survived this tumultuous childhood and this physical health crisis to serve my purpose. And I sort of believe that so long as I'm serving my purpose, I am serving society. And, I'm just serving this higher power that needs people like me that, sort of advocate for mental and physical wellness. Because, at the very beginning of my business story, it was no one should see their parent decline in this way. Death should be celebratory to me. Grief will always be part of death, but I'm rooting for like as many, late life passings as I can. And I mean, I was honestly thinking my father died 5 years ago this month. and he was only 63, so he would only be 68. And I sort of remarked to myself, I'm like, wow, he wasn't even 70 yet, and like I really would have loved another 10 or 15 years with him. And I think had I had that, I could have had more peace with his death. But I'm still grieving that loss very much for many reasons. But that's my goal, is longevity for people. And I don't know a mom on this planet who's with their child who doesn't want to see their child go through every beautiful milestone in their life. And stress is hurting us. And I also believed unprocessed, trapped energy in our bodies that can be a propeller to succeed in your job and succeed in and be productive. That's the energy that we actually need to release out of our body, because when things are trapped and stored and churning, that is where the body starts hurting. And I am truly evidence of that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Gina. So I know your website is healingwithgina.com.
Correct.
And I know that you're on Facebook and Instagram. How else can people
Correct.
reach out to you if they would like to, or follow you?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. All three of those ways. You can direct message me through Instagram or Facebook. You can email me at gina@healingwithgina.com. I'm also on TikTok as intuitive.coach.gina. And I think that covers it. You can definitely get to me any of those ways. You can book time with me right off of my website. And
you have a really great newsletter. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you,
yes.
But you have a great newsletter that I love that you put out, that has a lot of information, and it also recaps kind of how to, like, what am I trying to say? Your different programs that you have available that, people can work with you or find a way to kind of, you have programs that people can kind of test to see if they, if you guys can work together well, because you're great. And I think most anybody could benefit from you. But some people, they want to know that and feel that and get to know if the energy feels good,
It's true. It's true. And it's all about my energy. My energy is not right for everybody. It's not. And actually, as a healing people pleaser, that is one area to heal. Not everyone's going to like us, and not everyone is for us. Right. But you can also go to the link in my profile on Instagram, and you can join my newsletter list through that link as well.
Thank you so much, Gina. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Tara.
Thank you so much.